Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Like Eric, it's not usual for the FBI to have walk-up music, so it's kind of neat. Really do appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. Being assigned in D.C., it's very healthy for me to get outside of the Beltway once in a while and realize that the heart of the country still does exist, and not everything revolves around politics and things that are important in Washington, D.C. So thank you again. I'm very excited to be here. I'll start with, when I do public presentations, a lot of people will ask me afterwards the accent. They try to place the accent. So I'll get that out of the way first with a point, because I'm in Ohio here. I'm a native Oklahoman. Sooner born, sooner bred. So I'm hoping that my Ohio crowd has not given up on Baker Mayfield yet. I would point out that even though they only have 6 wins so far, that's 6 more than they had a couple of seasons ago. So don't give up on him yet. He'll still get you there, I think. Meetings like this are very important for the FBI. Our cooperation that we have from our private sector partners is extremely important in everything we do. There's a quote from J. Edgar Hoover that's prominently displayed at our FBI headquarters there in downtown D.C., and it reads, "The most effective weapon against crime is cooperation. The efforts of all law enforcement agencies with the support and understanding of the American people." And that's just as true now as it was over 50 years ago when he said that. And that cooperation that we have with partners like you, that we work with things like emerging technologies on, is extremely important. And if we don't have that cooperation and confidence from the American public, we cannot succeed. And that's why it's so important for people like Eric and me to come out and meet with you and share information and get to know one another, because we are much better served if we understand one another and, very importantly, work together to combat criminal activity. And there is plenty of criminal activity that there is to address here, and those are some of the things I want to visit with you a little bit about this morning. So the things that we'll go over, we'll talk about some of the things that we're seeing and that we're investigating as it involves some of these emerging technologies, and how we in the federal government and law enforcement in general are trying to keep up. And it's not always easy. And then hopefully at the end we'll have a moment or two for a couple of Q&A type of things, if there are some things that I didn't address that you would like to hear on what the FBI particularly is doing in this realm. We'll start out with an admission here that I've been in law enforcement for a long time and make a lot of presentations, and I'm generally very comfortable talking about the criminal work of the FBI. However, when Eric talked about this conference, I was a little bit concerned, because I knew that the audience here was very technologically savvy, and that I will admit that I am not. And I did not want to get over my skis and talk over my head here. I looked at some of the folks that are in this room and the jobs that you have, and it's a safe bet that a good 99% of you are much more technologically savvy than I am. So I will not try to bluff my way through talking in depth about blockchain technology and even the in-depth intricacies of cryptocurrency. But what I will talk about is the FBI's role, what we're seeing, some of the trends we're seeing, some of the initiatives that we have. And I want to give a couple of case examples, some very recent case examples where we've had some success. And hopefully that'll resonate with you in the roles that you have in your current jobs. Just to give you a little bit, most people are vaguely familiar with the FBI, but our setup as far as our operational divisions and how we structure things. Quickly, for our operational divisions, as Eric said, I'm responsible for the criminal investigative division. I'll talk about it in just a moment. Other operational divisions are the counterterrorism division. Post 9/11, the FBI's number one priority was, and still is, protecting the homeland from terrorist attacks. So the counterterrorism division is an extremely important and busy division, and that covers all of the international terrorism and domestic terrorism. You see them in the news quite a lot, and they are very busy. Another operational division is the counterintelligence division, and that obviously is protecting us from the foreign adversaries who are trying to steal our trade secrets and just overall spying. For this group, the point that I would make for our counterintelligence division is the PRC is extremely aggressive in looking for the things that many of you in this room are responsible for. It's a little bit preaching to the choir, I would think, to talk about that, but I do want to hit on it for a moment, and the importance of cooperation and awareness of the adversary there. As I said, PRC is aggressive and they're good. They will save years and millions, if not billions of dollars going around research and development by stealing trade secrets. It's a very important part of the work of the FBI and our partner agencies to try to protect those. We can't do that without the cooperation of people like you as we get the message out and work together to try to thwart their efforts. And if there's any question about whether or not they are out there aggressively, and they're not alone, there are other state actors that are trying to steal state trade secrets, but they're the best and they're the most aggressive, and it's pervasive. Director Ray has addressed that in a number of speeches, and if you're interested in more information on that, certainly let us know and we can get you more information in that realm. But bringing that back to me and the things that I'm responsible for now in the Criminal Investigative Division, that covers the gamut of all criminal activity, from violent gangs, public corruption, civil rights, complex white-collar crime, all the way from the old-time crimes of bank robbery and kidnapping, the full gamut of Criminal Investigative Division work. And then overlaid for all three of the big operational divisions, we have the Cyber Division. And cyber touches everything that we do. When you look at this and you think about the counterintelligence threat, or the counterterrorism threat, and then sometimes you think, well, maybe not in violent crime. Well, if there's a local homicide here in Cleveland, that will have a cyber element to it. Either the perpetrator or the victim almost assuredly had a cell phone. They probably had a social media footprint. So your local detectives here in Cleveland, Ohio, will have a cyber element to any investigation they do, virtually any investigation they do. So our cyber division works hand in hand with all of our operational divisions for the investigative work that we do in the cyber realm, and that obviously has a big part of what we're talking about here today and the work that you do. And when you think about, as I talked about earlier, the keeping up with the emerging technologies and the things that we do, there are a lot of parallels to the beginning of the FBI and keeping up with changes in how business is conducted. You go back to the 20s and some of the earlier days of the FBI, and the reason the FBI grew over time was the transient nature of crime. Automobiles enabled gangsters to rob banks in multiple jurisdictions, go to multiple states. That necessitated the need for the FBI to pursue across borders. Yet those technological changes didn't change what we needed to prove as far as crime. We still needed witness statements, fingerprints, handwriting on notes, serial numbers on the dollar bills to follow the money, and other evidence that we would normally gather. The FBI and other law enforcement agencies adapted over time to that interstate nexus of these crimes. Today, the internet and our interconnectedness provides a unique opportunity for expansive growth of commerce and social connectedness. It also provides a mechanism and platform for exploitation by criminal and national security actors to do the things that they've done for many, many years. They steal money, they steal secrets, engage in espionage, and fund ideologies, amongst other things. So while the technology's changed, the same old evidence gathering techniques are still applicable today. We still need to get witness statements, we still deal with digital fingerprints of the actor, and we still follow the money. Brings back a guy named Willie Sutton. I don't know, some older folks in the audience might remember Willie Sutton. He goes back even before my time. But he was a famous bank robber that was finally caught in the 50s. He was one of the first people on the FBI's top 10 list. And there's a famous quote attributed to him. He later said that he didn't actually say it, but supposedly he was interviewed at one time and said, "Willie, why do you rob banks?" And he said, "That's where the money is." And now as we talk about cryptocurrency and the things that are available that this conference is talking about, that is where the money is. And if there's money and profit to be made, criminals will be there. And they will be, in some ways, ahead of us. They were some of the early adopters of using virtual currency. And there will continue to be opportunities for the bad guys to make money, and they will continue in this realm and will continue to try to thwart their activities. In the past 10 years, we've seen an increased use of technology to enable the criminal element, and within the past few years, we've seen an exponential increase in the use of virtual currency and cryptocurrency. Fortunately for us, the FBI has a lot of highly technical people that are very well versed in this area. When I was preparing for this, I got to sit down with some folks. Not everybody in the FBI is a 50-year-old white guy that's not tech savvy. We do have a lot of folks that are really good in this area, and one of the things they pointed me towards that I did see in the last week or so was a documentary called Banking on Bitcoin. Just out of curiosity in this crowd, how many of you have actually seen that documentary? Familiar with it? It's kind of hard to see out here, but quite a few. Just if you're interested, and many of you, as I said, are very tech savvy and probably don't need this, but if you're interested in kind of the history of cryptocurrency and some of the players behind it, that is an interesting documentary. It's an easy find. It's only about an hour and a half long, but it gives some overview of some of the really altruistic thoughts behind some of the people that wanted a different type of currency exchange out there, some from the very libertarian views of not wanting the federal government up in their business, and a different thing than the normal banking process, and some of the inherent problems that come with lack of regulation, which we'll talk about just a little bit more in a moment. But it's a very interesting documentary. It does, for those of you really versed in it, don't know if there ever was an actually Satoshi Nakamoto, but it does address that, and I found it extremely interesting. Anyway, within the functional areas of crime, the FBI is responsible for addressing drug trafficking organizations, transnational organized crime groups, violent crime, human trafficking, child exploitation, gangs, public corruption, and extremely sophisticated white-collar criminals. Within each of these areas, we've seen the same dramatic increase in the use of cryptocurrency. This has required us to change how we do business at the FBI, and I want to provide some examples of how others can look at the technology and the use of cryptocurrencies. The FBI has actually been addressing the threat posed by criminal use of new payment technologies long before the invention of Bitcoin. Criminals are nearly always early adapters of new technologies and new financial systems. Starting in the late 1990s, cyber criminals were among the first illicit groups to take widespread advantages of systems like e-gold, Liberty Reserve as a way to launder money and to purchase or sell cyber goods and service in furtherance of their criminal objectives. Logically, it made sense that cyber criminals would be early adapters of this new technology. They understood how virtual currencies work and how they could be utilized to move value from one person to another. It required some technical expertise, and your average individual or criminal didn't have that capability. But it's become easier and more widespread. This is because the general public is better educated on virtual currencies, and the technical expertise needed now is somewhat minimal. With easy-to-use interfaces and apps, the layperson can understand and utilize these sophisticated technologies, which are often facilitated by blockchain technology. When it comes down to it, the use of cryptocurrencies is really just another method for criminals to move money, and that gets to the heart of one of the things that we look at, and that is money laundering. Moving things of value from one place to another, which is the heart of money laundering. From the beginning, the FBI's interest in these financial technologies was focused on two areas, each tied to illicit use. Individuals using the technology to further their illicit activity by sending and accepting payment for illegal goods or services, or using it to conceal the origin of true nature of the funds, again, money laundering, and related companies that themselves violate the law. That's a lot of these exchanges operating as unlicensed money transmitters. With a lot of these things, when you look at it, it takes the government a little while to catch up with the technology. Fortunately for us in America, the technological advances don't move at the pace of government. If they did, we'd be a third world country. People like you move the ball very quickly, which is a good thing. The innovators out there are what keeps the country running, from the steel mills that we're moving past here to the technological advances that you're responsible for. But with those, the government does have to try to keep pace to a certain extent. And when you looked at these money exchanges that were outside of banking regulations, some regulations did need to catch up. Over the past several years, there have been a number of laws passed and regulations passed about them having to meet some of the same regulatory requirements that are involved with banks. And that's important for us as we try to trace the money in the illegal activity. And some of that legislation is still catching up, but we're in a better place now than we were just a few years ago. So different examples of some of the things that we look at. Exchanges. Illicit users are typically attracted to systems with lax anti-money laundering and know your customer controls. These services often attempt to evade U.S. action by operating out of countries that have poor regulatory oversight and are less willing to cooperate with U.S. law enforcement. These are problematic as they provide platforms for terrorists, kidnappers, cyber criminals, fraudsters to fund their activities or move the proceeds from their crime away from law enforcement authorities. And then the Darknet. Many of you obviously are extremely familiar with the Darknet and what that means. The Darknet marketplaces are websites that are accessible through anonymizing software that enable users to find and purchase drugs and other illicit goods using cryptocurrencies, reducing the risk of revealing their true identity. These sites facilitate the sale of a wide range of illegal drugs, including fentanyl and heroin, weapons, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and even explosive materials and knowledge for these. Murder for hire, purchase and trade of child pornography, which is very big on the Darknet, and fraud-related items such as stolen identities, credit cards, and debit cards. Many of you probably are extremely familiar with the Darknet. If you haven't ever perused and just gone on some of these sites, it is amazing what you can order and what is out there on the Darknet being openly advertised. You can literally order cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, be delivered to your home and have quite a bit of anonymous activity associated with it. Now, that's a little bit scary, and it's certainly a little bit hard to keep up with. And that brings me to one of the first case examples. If you bear with me, I want to read a little bit about it to you. It's from a case from this year, and it was called the Deep.Web. It was a website that provided links to Darknet marketplaces that sell illegal narcotics such as fentanyl, guns, other illegal contraband, and effectively making the site an entryway to Darknet markets for the general public. After accessing the Deep.Web, individuals used the links provided by the administrators to access illicit Darknet markets. When an individual purchased a product listed on the Darknet market, the administrators received a referral fee to their market account, which they laundered through shell companies. The site then referred hundreds of thousands of users to Darknet marketplaces. The users in turn completed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transactions, including purchases of fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, weapons, including purchases of handguns and assault rifles, and other illegal contraband. Over the course of the conspiracies, the administrators cashed out more than $15 million in kickback proceeds through various shell companies. This case was run out of our Pittsburgh office, and we had extreme and extensive cooperation throughout a number of international partners, including the Netherlands, Germany, and Israel. And at the culmination of the case in May of this year, the National Police of the Netherlands successfully seized the server, which was located overseas, obviously, and the Federal Police of Germany successfully located another domain site there, and arrests were made in London, Tel Aviv, and Brazil. It resulted in the seizure of a number of assets, and the case and the actual adjudication for some of the perpetrators is still ongoing. Excuse me. I bring that case up because it highlights not just the Darknet, but the extensive overseas cooperation that we have to have in these type of cases. We've gone from multi-state jurisdiction that we talked about earlier to literally worldwide implications on many of these cases. We're very fortunate. We have legal attaché offices throughout the world with the FBI, and our various partners, depending on the countries, are extremely beneficial to us, and we have great cooperation. Without that cooperation, we will not succeed, but that case was a good example of multiple partners and a good success. Another aspect of this are money mules. A money mule is someone who transfers illegal acquired money on behalf or at the direction of another. An unwitting money mule may be unaware of their part in the larger scheme. often solicited via online fraud schemes and asked to use their personal bank account to send or receive money for a broader criminal network. Increasingly, money mules are being instructed to deposit cash in a cryptocurrency kiosk, commonly known as ATMs, where the funds are often disappear into the hands of criminals overseas. And then initial Bitcoin offerings. These are investment schemes in which the fraudsters take advantage of the interest and excitement of cryptocurrencies to solicit the hard-earned money of investors. In fact, they just use the proceeds to keep the scheme by soliciting new investors and support their lavish lifestyle. Actually, it gets back to the old Ponzi schemes, which many of you are familiar with, and that brings me to the next example that I want to share with you. And this one actually is hot off the presses. I was glad this case came across my desk actually earlier this week. There were arrests made yesterday, so there was just a press release on this yesterday, and I want to highlight it because it is a great example of exactly what I was just talking about, that this type of Bitcoin-related activity is actually set up for fraudsters to run what amounted to a Ponzi scheme. So the background on the case, it's something that a number of our officers were involved in, but the primary office, the office of origin for us, was out of our Los Angeles office, and they opened an investigation into BitClub Network and its principals based on allegations the company was operating a pyramid scheme. From about 2014 through December of 19 now, they operated a mining service located in Iceland, which solicited investors and provided investors higher rates of return based on referrals of additional investors. Based on their volume of referrals, investors earned higher ranks within the network, which resulted in progressively higher rates of return for their original investments. The investigation showed the conspirators discussing the unsustainable rate of referral fees being paid. They raised over $1 billion from investors throughout the world. Financial analysis showed the movement of investor funds to unrelated entities, as well as funds being expended for personal benefit of the co-conspirators. The actual loss is still being determined. So on 12/10, which was yesterday, the FBI, in coordination with the IRS, arrested individuals in Colorado, Florida, California, and we're working with overseas partners for an arrest in Germany and Romania. I want to read a quote from you from the United States Attorney when that case was taken down yesterday. He talked about the conspirators and when they had conversations about their target audience. They would be, quote, dumb investors, referred to as sheep, and said that he was building this whole model on the backs of idiots. He directed others to manipulate the figures displayed as mining earnings during the course of the conspiracy. The charge includes over $700 million in assets that will be targeted, and it's an ongoing case. And I bring it up, one, for its recency, that it was very good timing for me to get briefed on that case this week before coming out here. But it's another, I think, excellent example of the type of cooperation that we have and the types of cases that we're seeing, just to give you an idea of what we're facing out there. Within each of these threats, there's an underlying criminal issue, whether it's a murder for hire, narcotics activity, or anything else that we've talked about before. These criminals are going to use cryptocurrency, and it requires an emphasis on our efforts to combat this. There's always more we can do, and we can always be improving in our own internal efforts and in collaboration with our partners like you. That's why we're here. It's an ever-changing landscape, and it's in order to protect the American citizens, we need to understand these changes in technology. We also need to convey to the private sector the important part that they play, that all of you play, in trying to combat this. With that, I also want to talk to you a moment about what we call Lawful Access. And I brought a few pamphlets that I'll leave for the folks. And both our director, Christopher Wray, and A.G. Barr have made speeches on this in the recent past. And at one point we were calling it Lawful Access, I forgot what, we've done so well with the new branding that I forgot what we used to call it. It is Lawful Access, that's the term of art now. But what we're talking about is encrypted technology and getting to sites that the government can't crack. There is encryption out there that you're very well aware of that It can take years to ever get to the information that we seek. And again, the government's trying to catch up with that. And the FBI, we're not policy makers. We inform the policymakers on the implications of things like encrypted technology. And we work with our private sector partners to inform them of the risks that are associated with that. We're not looking to step on anyone's privacy rights. And when you talk about the term lawful access, it is a good term. We're not looking to look into things that we don't have a right to know, but we are looking at things that there are legal processes for, whether it's a search warrant or a subpoena, and being able to get to information that helps us solve crime. And these can range from, like we talked about, the very high-dollar white-collar crime to violent crimes, kidnappings, and the like, and it can range to international terrorism, threats to the very fabric of our country. If we are up against things that we cannot see, that we cannot access, it puts us at a severe disadvantage. There are some good back and forth arguments for what is too much, and that is for our policymakers to decide, and for people like you that are leading the private industry here to have great input on that. Where is the cooperation most beneficial, and where is anything that you consider government overreach? And those are the type of things that the policymakers need to hear from. So we will inform you of our limitations if we can't see things, and in the end, the policymakers make decisions on what type of regulations there will be. I think we're best served when private sector is fully engaged and fully informed on what the ramifications are. So like I say, we have some pamphlets on this, and certainly willing to share information on that, and there are other folks that are very well versed in it that can provide additional information if needed. So I throw that out for you. So with that, it's kind of a little unscripted at this point. I would like to open it up, and I have a couple of folks from Eric Smith, and I do want to put a plug for Eric Smith. He's one of our best SACs. He is very vested in this area. He spent a deal of time at headquarters and was hoping to be able to come back to Cleveland. He very much cares about this AOR, is very vested here, and he's a great partner to you and a great partner to his law enforcement partners here in the Cleveland area. And he has some of his folks here at this conference, and hopefully you will have the opportunity, if you haven't already, to meet some of them and have some interaction with them to get to know them and maybe bounce some ideas off of them. And one or two of them are here in the audience too. So what I'd like to do in the couple of minutes that I have left here, if there are any questions that you have about what the FBI is doing, trends that we're seeing, any just general questions about what we're doing, I would very much welcome those and would like to have those. It's hard for me to see out here. These lights are absolutely blinding. I enjoyed the walk-up music. I do not enjoy the lights.